Welcome again to Math 800 Pre-Algebra. This is section 1.2, Introduction to Signed Numbers. The objectives for section 1.2 are to write positive and negative numbers used in everyday situations, 2, to graph signed numbers on a number line, 3, to use the less than and greater than symbols to compare integers, and 4, to find the absolute value of integers. So our first objective, write positive and negative numbers used in everyday situations. Numbers that are greater than 0 are called positive numbers. Numbers less than 0 are called negative numbers. It should be noted that 0 itself is neither positive or negative. It is the number that separates the positives and negatives. Here are some examples of how positive and negative numbers are used in everyday life. A plane took off from the airport and climbed to 20,000 feet above sea level. We can write this using a positive number, positive 20,000 feet. Often we do not include the positive symbol in front of a number, we just assume it is positive. A scuba diver swam down to 25.5 feet below the surface. We can write this using a negative number, negative 25.5 feet. Note, to write a negative number, put a negative sign or a dash in front of it. This is negative 10. But you have to notice that the negative sign looks exactly like the subtraction sign, as in 5 minus 3, which equals 2. The negative sign and subtraction sign do not mean the same thing. We'll talk about that more when we get into subtraction. To avoid confusion for now, we will write negative signs in red and put them up higher than subtraction signs. So this will be our negative, notice it is raised, and this will be our subtraction. Other than this example, all the subtractions will be black, like the rest of the text. So again, this means negative 10, this means 14 minus 10. When you get into your next math classes and you start using calculators, most calculators have a separate button for negative symbols versus subtraction. And every calculator is a little different, so when you do get to eventually use calculators, make sure you know which is which on your calculator. Again, notice the raised dash. Once we get into chapter 4, we will write negative signs in the traditional way. But again, notice if you're using a graphing calculator, it may show negative signs as raised. Okay, positive numbers can be written two ways. Write a positive sign in front of the number. Positive 2 is positive 2. Again, we will write the sign in the raised position to avoid confusion with the symbol for addition, as in 6 plus 3. This is addition. This is positive. However, typically we do not write any sign. So for example, when you see 16, you always assume this to be positive 16. That's what we're going to do most of the time. Okay, so here's another example. Write a loss of $500 as a number with its appropriate sign. Negative $500. Raised negative sign. Okay. A number line is like a thermometer turned sideways. So now we're getting into objective 2, graphing signed numbers on a number line. So here's our number line. Positive numbers are always on the right. Always on the right. This is not optional. Negative numbers are always on the left. 0, which as I mentioned is neither positive nor negative, is the thing that divides the number line in half. Everything to the right is positive, everything to the left is negative. So now we'll graph each number on the number line. We'll start with A, negative 5. So it's negative, so it's to the left of 0, and you just go to where its spot is, and then you draw a dot. B is 3, it is positive, so it's to the right of 0. It will be right here, so we put a dot. C is 1.5. This is a mixed number, which we will get into more, but for now just know that it is 1 plus a half. So it's not quite to 2, but it's halfway there. There's C. D is 0. That's what splits between the negatives and the positives. And E is negative 1, which will be right there. Objective 3 is using the less than and greater than symbols to compare integers. So again, here are the integers. The dot dot dots mean these go on forever. The greater than, this symbol means greater than. This symbol means less than. So when comparing 1 and 4, we're going to compare 1 and 4. 1 is to the left of 4, so therefore 1 is less than 4, or 1 is smaller than 4. We will use this symbol to mean less than, so 1 is less than 4. Here we're comparing -3 and 0. Now this time we're starting with when comparing 0 and -3. Notice that that's not the same order as they are on the number line. Here 0 is to the right of -3, so therefore 0 is greater than -3, and we will use the other symbol. 0 is greater than -3. In general, any number that is to the left is smaller than any number that's to the right. However, you can use the opposite symbol to represent the same relationship. So here we have 1 is less than 4. We can switch this around and say 4 is greater than 1. It means the same thing. Same way over here, we could say -3 is less than 0. Instead of saying 0 is greater than -3, it means the same thing. So you have to be careful when comparing answers with group mates. One of you might write it this way, one might write it this way, but you really are representing the same relationship, and both answers are correct. It's pretty obvious when we're just working with numbers, but when you get into 901, you'll be doing these with variables, letters, and then it can get really tricky. So be careful that the relationship can be written in two different ways. Okay, so one way to remember which symbol to use is that the smaller end of the symbol points to the smaller number. So since 1 is smaller, the small pointy end faces the 1. Since -3 is smaller, the small pointy end faces the -3. Another way to remember is how I was taught, which was a long time ago, was to think of the alligator mouth, the hungry alligator. It's open towards the bigger thing. So whatever way you need to remember it, just as long as you get it correct. So write less than or greater than between each pair of numbers to make a true statement. 0 is smaller, so we have 0 is less than 2. -4 is smaller than 1, so I'll have 1 is greater than -4. The pointy end is towards the -4. And -4 and -2, -4 is smaller, so we'll have -4 is less than -2. These can get a little tricky. One way to think about it is whatever would you rather have in your bank account. Even though they both suck, I would rather have -$2 than -4. So therefore -2 is considered the bigger number. Again, if it was on the number line, -4 is to the left of -2, therefore it is the smaller number. Anything on the left is the smaller number. And once again, this is the same as writing it the other way. 2 is greater than 0. This is the same as saying -4 is less than 1. And this is the same as saying -2 is greater than -4. These are all the same answer, and I would accept both of them. Lastly, we're going to talk about the absolute value of integers. The absolute value of a number is its distance from 0 on the number line. Absolute value is indicated by two vertical bars, so this is read as the absolute value of 6. Be careful when you are writing that this doesn't look like two 1s, and so that it looks like the number 161. The absolute value of 6 is very different from the number 161. Be careful with how you write those. So now we'll find some absolute values. This is asking for the absolute value of 4. Here's our number line. 4 is 4 spaces away from 0. Therefore, the absolute value of 4 is 4. This is the absolute value of -4. So -4 is again 4 spaces from 0, so it also has an absolute value of 4. Notice the absolute value of 4 and the absolute value of -4 are the same number. When two numbers have the same absolute value but are on different sides of 0, they are called opposites. We'll talk about that more in section 1.3. Another way to think about absolute value is it's looking at just the value of the number, and it is not concerned with the sign. It doesn't matter if it's a positive or a negative, it's just asking how far away is it from 0. So that concludes section 1.2. Your next steps will be to complete the worksheet for section 1.2, WS2, that's in D2L. If you need more help to complete the worksheet, D2L has additional videos posted. There's also additional videos in my math lab. When you have completed the worksheet for section 1.2, you have to check your answers against the key posted in D2L. Remember, that is required. Once you have done that, complete the online homework for section 1.2 through My Math Lab, and then start on section 1.3.